Hello, welcome to Everything Recapped. Today I will show you the recap of a 1999 movie titled Eyes Wide Shut. Spoiler alert, watch out and take care. Eyes Wide Shut is a 1999 erotic mystery psychological drama film directed, produced, and co-written by Stanley Kubrick. Tragically, it was the director's final film, with Kubrick dying less than a week after screening an incomplete cut for the studio and its stars. Like much of the director's work, like The Shining, movie fans love to debate the symbolism and meaning of Eyes Wide Shut. There are many readings of the story available, and the movie itself embracing a sort of dream nightmare logic. More on this at the end of the video. The plot centers on a Manhattan doctor embarks on a bizarre, night-long odyssey after his wife's admission of unfulfilled longing. It's Christmas season, and the Harford family consists of a couple, Bill Harford, a doctor, his wife, Alice, and their young child Helena are invited to a Christmas party hosted by one of Bill's patients, Victor. As they dress, Alice, a pretty young lady, keeps asking Bill if her dress is fine before they walk towards their nanny, Rose, who is scheduled to take care of their daughter that night. They bid Helena and Rose good night, and they promise to return around 1 a.m. They get to the venue, and they are welcomed by the hosts, who ask them to join the other guests at the party and enjoy themselves. As Bill and Alice dance, Alice asks Bill why Victor keeps inviting them to the party every Christmas, and Bill also sees one of his classmates at medical school, Nick Nightingale. Alice wonders why a medical school student like Nick is a pianist, but Bill informs her Nick dropped out of medical school before they finished. During the dance, the band tells the guests that they will be taking a 10 minutes break, and the guests should assemble to dance again after 10 minutes. During this break, Alice asks for an excuse to visit the ladies, and on her way, she picks a glass of wine, and she stops around the corner to drink. On the other hand, Bill goes to meet Nick. He calls out for Nick, who recognizes him immediately. They catch up on old times, and he asks Nick why he left medical school. Nick asks about Bill's career, and Bill tells him once a doctor, always a doctor. While they keep up with old times, one of the band comes to call Nick for a meeting. He tells Bill that he will see him later, and if that's not possible, he will be in the town the next week at Sonata Cafe so they can meet then. Alice drinks her wine by a table. She stops and drops the cup, and a man carries the cup. She attempts to collect it back, but he insists that the wine is his own, and he drinks it. He introduces himself as Shandor, a Hungarian, and she introduces herself to him. He takes her hands, kisses her, and asks her who she is at the party with. She tells him she is with her husband, and he comments that it's bad timing, but asks if her husband won't be pissed if she dances with him, and she replies affirmatively. She starts dancing with Shandor, who asks her what she does for a living, and she tells him she is presently jobless because the art gallery she works closed down due to funds. He tells her he knows some gallery owners and can help her get a job. As they talk, she keeps looking around for her husband. He asks her why a pretty lady like her, who can get any man, will decide to get married, but she replies why not. He says back in the historical days, women married to find a man to take their virginity so they would get the opportunity to do all they wanted to do. On the other hand, Bill meets two models who try to seduce him. One of them tells him she had met him before during one of her photo shoots where dust entered her eyes, and he offered her his handkerchief. They both hold him and drag him away. He gets concerned and asks where they are taking him, and they say they are taking him to the rainbow. His adventure gets cut short when he gets a message from Victor. Victor says he should come to him immediately, so he leaves the ladies to attend to Victor. As he enters Victor's room, he sees a naked lady who has passed out on the chair, and Victor is also dressing up. Victor complains that the lady, Mandy, passed out during their intercourse after taking what he calls speedball. Bill asks if she took anything else, and Victor tells him she took weed, coke, and some wines. He calls out for her and helps her recover. As she wakes, he tells her she is lucky and will be fine for now, but she shouldn't do the same again. He asks Victor to keep Mandy in that room for about an hour before asking someone to take her home, and Victor also begs him to keep the rescue mission between them. Meanwhile, in the party hall, Shandor asks Alice if she would like to visit Victor's art gallery upstairs, but Alice refuses. She tells him she needs to find her husband, but he tries to persuade her. He asks her if he can see her again, but she reminds him by wriggling her fingers to show her wedding rings and tells him she is married. The couple returns home, and Alice undresses. Her husband comes to make out with her, and they kiss. The next day, Bill goes to work while Alice stays home to take care of her daughter. That night, after taking care of herself and smoking, Alice asks Bill about the two models he was with. She asks if he had sex with them, but he replies in negation. He tells her he went to meet Victor later, and he also asks about Shandor and asks what Shandor wants. Alice says Shandor wanted to take her upstairs, which she refuses. This makes Bill comment that Shandor wanted to have sex with his wife, which is understandable. Alice asks why it's understandable and why Bill thinks any man around her wants to make out with her. He tells her he isn't jealous because he is sure she is his wife and she will never be unfaithful. But she laughs. She asks him if he remembers a naval officer who sat beside them during their last vacation and tells him how much she imagined herself with the officer. During this conversation, Bill receives a call that one of his patients is dead. He tries to get to the patient home, and on his way, he keeps thinking of Alice and the naval officer. He arrives, and he meets the deceased daughter, Marion. He tries to console her for her loss, and Marion, who doesn't want to leave with her boyfriend Carl, tries to kiss him. He refuses her and tells her she doesn't know him. At about the same time, Carl arrives, and Bill leaves. He walks around mindlessly as he sees several people making out, and he keeps imagining Alice with the naval officer. He walks beside a sex worker, Domino, who asks him for the time and starts walking beside him. She invites him in, and he follows her. He asks if he needs to pay, and after negotiation, they start making out. He receives a call from Alice, who calls to know if he will be home soon. He tells her he is still waiting for deceased relatives, but due to his conscience, he pays Domino for her efforts and leaves. On his way, he sees Nick presenting at a club. He enters and speaks to Nick, who says he has another engagement where he is to play blindfolded. He says the time his blindfold removed, he saw several ladies making out with men, and everyone was in costume and blindfolds, and there was a password before entering. Nick receives a call for the password of the party. As he writes it down, Bill looks at it. He asks for the location from Nick, which Nick refuses to give him. Nick reluctantly gives him the location, hoping that Bill won't get the custom to enter the party. He goes to a costume seller, Millich, who he offers huge amounts of money for the costume. As they enter, Millich sees her daughter having intercourse with two men. He gets angry at her and hits her. Millich gives Bill the costume and he orders a taxi to the location. He asks the taxi to wait for him and he will pay, and he enters the location to meet a sex ritual. After the ritual, one of the ladies walks with him. She tells him he doesn't know what he is doing and that place isn't somewhere he should be. She tells him he is at risk, but he refuses to hear. He keeps walking around, and she comes to warn him again before one of the masked men comes to ask him if he is the one that stopped the taxi. The man tells him his taxi driver wants to see him. As he walks with the man, he is taken into a crowded room. The master of the ceremony asks him for the house password, which is different from the entrance password. He doesn't know it, so they ask him to remove his mask and undress for a ritual. But the lady who warned him earlier steps in and says she will volunteer herself to be redeemed instead of him. They allow him to leave, but warn him not to tell anyone. He goes home and sees Alice smiling in the dream. He wakes her up, and she explains that she has a nightmare. The following day, he goes to the bar, where he asks for Nick's hotel. Then he visits the hotel. He learns that Nick has checked out that morning, and he asks the attendant if there is anything unusual. The attendant says Nick returned with two huge men and bruises on his face and left immediately. He goes to return the costume to Millich, but finds out the mask is missing and also sees that Millich has given his daughter into prostitution. He returns to work, but he can't take the thought of Alice and the naval officer away. He cancels his schedule and returns to the ritual location. However, he meets a man who gives him a warning letter. He leaves disturbed and perplexed. He returns home, and he keeps remembering his wife's dream of having several people have sex with her. He walks away from home and calls Marion, but Carl picks up, so he ends the call and goes to Domino's house. He meets her roommate, who says Domino will not return, and since he was with her the night before, he deserves to know that Domino's test shows HIV. He leaves and notices a man tailing him. He goes to a newspaper stall and buys a paper where he reads that an ex-beauty queen dies of an overdose. He finds out it's Mandy and then goes to the hospital to check her corpse. He looks at her and remembers the lady who warns him to leave the event and figures it's Mandy. As he leaves, he receives a call from Victor, who asks him to visit. When he gets there, Victor says he knows what is happening, He first tries to form being ignorant, but Victor tells him he was also at the place, and he wonders how Bill got the address. Then he realizes Bill knew Nick from his party. Bill asks if Nick is fine, and Victor tells him Nick is probably with his family. Victor says the lady's warning and the fear were all fake and not real, although the people at the party are people that if he gets to know, he won't be able to sleep. He shows Victor the news of Mandy's death and asks if Mandy is the lady at the party, and Victor replies affirmatively, although he insists that Mandy died from a drug overdose and it has nothing to do with the ritual. Unable to believe Victor, Bill leaves, and when he gets home, he sees his missing mask beside Alice on the bed. He gets scared and starts crying. He wakes Alice up. He tells her all that has happened, and they both shed tears. The next day, they go Christmas shopping with their daughter. During the shopping, Bill asks Alice what she thinks they should do, but Alice says she believes they should be grateful that they both survived their adventures, whether in a dream or reality. The movie ends when Alice tells Bill they have to do something as soon as possible. He asks her what she thinks they should do, and she tells them fuck. Now more on debate about symbolism and meaning of Eyes Wide Shut. Masks, both literal and figurative, are a major motive. The big question is, how did the missing mask get next to Alice on the bed, and who left it? The most obvious answer is Alice found the mask and left it out as a way to let Bill know she knew something was going on. This is the implication of Dream Story 2, with the movie being quite faithful to the structure of the novella, though Kubrick obviously leaves this moment up to interpretation. The second and more terrifying suggestion is the mask is a final warning from the secret society for Bill to drop any further investigation, or the fate that befell the woman who saved him could be visited upon Alice. One intriguing reading of the Eyes Wide Shut mask being on the pillow is that it's only in Bill's head, as if he's exhausted by trying to hide his attempts at infidelity or true feelings from Alice, leading to an emotional breakdown. Other interpretations are floating around, including the idea Alice was also at the party, and while there's no set meaning for how the mask got on that pillow, the idea Alice put it there herself seems to be the prevailing theory. Given how upset she appeared following his confession, it's very unlikely she knew exactly what he was out doing, however. Thanks for watching the recap! Kindly subscribe to my channel to get notified when we post the next recap. See you next time!